The alarm siren screamed across New Haven Colony at exactly 0600 hours. Commander Jacob Mills was drinking his morning coffee when every screen in the defense station turned red. His cup fell from his hand, shattering on the floor as he stared at the readings. 30 warships had just appeared in orbit. Not human ships. Not anything humans had ever seen before. Jacob ran to the command center, his boots echoing in the empty hallway. The night shift operators were frozen at their stations, staring at the massive vessels that now blocked out the stars. Each ship was 3 times larger than Earth's biggest carrier. Their hulls were dark purple, covered in strange symbols that seemed to glow with inner light. "Get me Administrator Hayes," Jacob ordered, trying to keep his voice steady. "And wake up everyone in the Defense Division. Now." Lauren Hayes arrived within 10 minutes, still buttoning her jacket. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen plenty of trouble in her 30 years running colonies. But even she went pale when she saw the alien fleet. "Have they made contact?" she asked. "Nothing yet," Jacob replied. "They're just sitting there, watching us." New Haven was home to 50,000 people. They had come here 23 years ago to build a new life among the stars. The colony had farms, schools, and small factories. Children played in the parks. Families grew old together. Just last week, there had been a terrible accident in the eastern mines. 47 people had died when a tunnel collapsed. The colony was still mourning, still burying their dead. And now this. The communication system suddenly crackled to life. A deep voice filled the command center, speaking perfect English with a strange musical accent. "Humans of New Haven. I am Ambassador Thelnox of the Vakreen Empire. We come for what is ours. You will return the child immediately." Lauren grabbed the microphone. "This is Administrator Lauren Hayes. What child are you talking about? We have no Vakreen citizens here." There was a long pause. Then the voice came back, colder than before. "Do not play games with us, human. Our sensors detected the royal prince on your world. He was sent here as part of his coming-of-age trial. We have come to retrieve him. You will produce him within 48 hours, or we will take him by force." Jacob felt his stomach drop. Royal prince? Coming-of-age trial? Nothing made sense. "Please, there must be a mistake," Lauren said. "We have only human colonists here. We would know if there was an alien child among us." "You have 48 hours," the voice repeated. "If you do not comply, we will destroy your colony and search the ruins ourselves." Fell knocks out. The communication line went dead. Lauren turned to Jacob, her face white. "Get me a complete census. Every child in this colony. I want names, ages, and genetic records. Start with any child who arrived here in the last 10 years. "You think they're telling the truth?" Jacob asked. "I think we have a war fleet in orbit that could turn this colony into dust," Lauren said. "So yes, we're going to assume they're telling the truth." The next few hours were chaos. Every department head was pulled into emergency meetings. Colony security went door to door, checking on families with children. Scientists reviewed genetic databases. Teachers were questioned about unusual students. Jacob coordinated with Earth's military command. The nearest fleet was 3 weeks away. Even if they left right now, traveling at maximum speed, they would arrive long after New Haven was destroyed. The colony was completely alone. "We should evacuate," one of Jacob's officers suggested. "Get everyone on transport ships and run." "Run where?" Jacob asked. "Those ships are faster than anything we have. They'd catch us in an hour." Meanwhile, Lauren sat in her office with Dr. Peter Grant, the colony's chief physician. He was a quiet man who had delivered half the babies on New Haven. His hands shook as he scrolled through medical records. "I've checked every child under 20, Peter said. "They're all human. Every genetic test confirms it." "What about adopted children?" Lauren asked. "Anyone who came here without biological parents?" Peter stopped scrolling. His eyes widened. "There was one," he said slowly. "Danny Morrison. He was found abandoned near the Morrison homestead about 8 years ago. Karen and Steve took him in, raised him as their own. They never officially registered the adoption because they couldn't prove where he came from. "Where is he now?" Lauren asked, though part of her already knew the answer. Peter's face went gray. "He died 2 weeks ago. In the mining accident." The room went silent. Lauren felt something cold settle in her chest. "Show me his medical records," she said. Peter pulled up the files. Danny Morrison had been a healthy 8-year-old boy. Brown hair, blue eyes, normal height and weight for his age. Nothing unusual in any of his checkups. But then Peter opened the genetic scan that had been done after his death. "I didn't notice this before," Peter whispered. "I was focused on identifying the bodies for burial. But look at this protein sequence. And these chromosomal markers. They're not human." Lauren stared at the screen. Danny Morrison had not been human. He had been something else, something that looked human enough to fool everyone, including his own parents. "We need to tell the Vakreen," Jacob said from the doorway. He had been listening. "They're looking for their prince. We found him. Case closed." "He's dead, Jacob," Lauren said quietly. "We need to tell them their prince is dead. And somehow, I don't think they're going to take that well." Outside, the sun was rising over New Haven. Children were walking to school. Farmers were heading to their fields. People were living their normal lives, not knowing that 30 warships hung in the sky above them, and that the peaceful world they knew was about to end. Lauren looked at the genetic report one more time, then closed the file. She had to talk to Karen and Steve Morrison. She had to tell them that the son they had loved and raised for 8 years had been an alien prince. And then she had to figure out how to tell an empire that their heir was dead. The countdown had begun. 48 hours until war. Karen Morrison sat in her living room, surrounded by boxes. She was supposed to be packing up Danny's things, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. Every toy, every drawing, every little piece of clothing reminded her of her son. 8 years old. Gone in a moment when the mine tunnel collapsed. The knock on the door made her jump. She wiped her eyes and opened it to find Administrator Hayes standing there with Dr. Grant. Their faces told her this wasn't a social visit. "Karen, we need to talk about Danny," Lauren said gently. "May we come in?" 20 minutes later, Karen sat frozen on her couch. Steve, her husband, gripped her hand so tightly it hurt. They stared at the genetic report on Lauren's tablet, not understanding half the words but understanding enough. "You're saying our son was an alien?" Steve asked. His voice was hollow. "We believe so," Dr. Grant said. "His genetic structure was modified or evolved to appear human. That's why we never noticed. He looked like us, acted like us. But at the cellular level, he was Vakreen." Karen couldn't breathe. She remembered the day they found Danny. He had been barely a year old, crying in the woods near their farm. No ship, no parents, no explanation. Just a baby who needed help. They had searched for weeks, trying to find his family. When no one came forward, they kept him. Loved him. Raised him as their own. "The Vakreen are here for him," Lauren said quietly. "They say he was their prince, sent here for some kind of trial. They want him back." "He's dead," Karen whispered. "He's already buried." "I know," Lauren said. "And we have to tell them." "But Karen, Steve, you need to understand something. These aliens, they don't see things the way we do. They're demanding Danny's body. And they're also demanding that we hand over whoever was responsible for his death." Steve stood up, his face red. "Responsible? It was an accident. The mine collapsed. Nobody could have prevented it." "They don't care," Jacob said from the doorway. He had been standing there, listening. "They think we stole their prince. They think we killed him. And they have 30 warships ready to destroy this entire colony if we don't give them what they want." Karen felt the room spinning. This couldn't be real. Danny had been her son. She had sung him to sleep every night. She had bandaged his scraped knees. She had helped him learn to read. How could he have been an alien prince? How could any of this be happening? Lauren contacted the Vakreen ship that afternoon. Ambassador Thelnox appeared on the screen, a massive creature with 4 arms and skin that shimmered like oil on water. His eyes were completely black, and when he spoke, rows of sharp teeth showed behind his lips. "We have located your prince," Lauren said carefully. "But I must inform you that he is deceased. He died 2 weeks ago in a mining accident." The silence that followed was terrifying. Thelnox's face didn't change expression, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Deceased," he repeated slowly. "You killed the heir to the Vakreen Empire." "It was an accident," Lauren insisted. "A tunnel collapsed. 47 people died, including the prince. We didn't know who he was." "Ignorance is not innocence," Thelnox said. "You will deliver the prince's body to us for proper royal burial. You will also surrender the humans responsible for his care. They will face trial before the emperor." "The people who cared for him were his adoptive parents," Lauren said. "They loved him. They raised him as their own son." "They stole royal property," Thelnox snapped. "The prince's trial was sacred. He was meant to survive alone, to prove his strength and cunning. Instead, these humans interfered with his destiny. They will pay for this crime." Lauren tried to negotiate, but Thelnox cut the transmission. Through the window, they could see the Vakreen ships moving into attack formation. Dr. Grant worked through the night, learning everything he could about Vakreen culture. He accessed the limited diplomatic files Earth had on the species. The Vakreen Empire controlled 40 star systems. They were ancient, powerful, and extremely proud. Their royal family was considered divine. Harming a prince was the worst crime imaginable. He also learned about their coming-of-age trials. Vakreen princes were sent to primitive worlds at age 5. They were supposed to survive using only their wits and strength, then signal for rescue when they turned 10. It was meant to teach them humility and resilience. But Danny had crashed. His ship must have malfunctioned. He was hurt, alone, and only a baby by human standards. Karen and Steve had saved his life. And now the Vakreen wanted them dead for it. Earth Command sent urgent messages. Comply with their demands. Surrender the parents. Give them the body. Don't start a war over 2 colonists. The political pressure was enormous. Some politicians argued that Karen and Steve should sacrifice themselves to save 50,000 people. But Lauren refused. They did nothing wrong. They saved a child's life. They interfered with an alien religious trial, one Earth admiral argued. Intentions don't matter. Results do. Jacob stood beside Lauren. If we hand over innocent people to be executed, what does that make us? What kind of civilization are we building out here? The deadline ticked down. 24 hours. 18 hours. 12 hours. Karen sat in her home, holding Danny's favorite toy. It was a small wooden spaceship that Steve had carved for him. Danny used to fly it around the house, making engine noises, pretending to explore the stars. He had dreamed of being a pilot someday. She thought about the Vakreen's demands. They wanted Danny's body for their rituals. They wanted her and Steve dead for saving him. None of it made sense. None of it was fair. But then she thought about something Dr. Grant had said. The Vakreen believed their royal family was divine. Their burial rites were sacred, meant to honor the dead and guide their spirits home. Karen had buried Danny in a simple grave with a wooden marker. He deserved better than that. If he really was a prince, if he really came from this great empire, maybe he deserved the honors they wanted to give him. She stood up, her decision made. "I want to meet with them," she told Lauren when the administrator came to check on her. "The Vakreen. I want to talk to their leader." "Karen, that's not a good idea," Lauren said. "They want you dead." "They want their prince honored," Karen said. "And I want that too. He was my son, but he was also their prince. Maybe there's a way to give everyone what they need." Steve tried to stop her. Jacob said it was too dangerous. But Lauren saw something in Karen's eyes, a determination that reminded her why humans had come to the stars in the first place. Not to run from problems, but to face them. "I'll arrange the meeting," Lauren said. The message was sent. Ambassador Thelnox agreed, but only if Karen came to the flagship. Alone. Unarmed. It was probably a trap. It was almost certainly a death sentence. But Karen Morrison had already lost her son. She had nothing left to fear. And sometimes, the bravest thing a mother could do was face the monsters in the dark, not for herself, but for the child she loved. The shuttle launched at dawn. Karen watched New Haven disappear below her, wondering if she would ever see it again. The Vakreen flagship was like nothing Karen had ever imagined. The shuttle docked in a hangar the size of a football field, and armored guards escorted her through corridors that seemed to pulse with bioluminescent light. Everything was too tall, built for creatures twice her size. She felt like a child in a world of giants. The throne room was vast and cold. Hundreds of Vakreen filled the space, their 4 arms crossed in identical poses of judgment. At the far end, on a throne of black stone, sat Emperor Gental. He was enormous, easily 12 feet tall, with ceremonial armor that glowed with the same purple light as the ship's hull. His face was sharp and angular, and his black eyes tracked Karen's every movement as she walked forward. Ambassador Thelnox stood beside the throne, his expression smug. He clearly expected this human to beg, to plead, to offer herself in exchange for her colony's survival. That's what weak species did. But Karen didn't kneel. She stopped 10 feet from the throne and looked directly at the Emperor. "Thank you for seeing me," she said. Her voice shook, but she kept talking. "I came to talk about your son." A ripple of shock went through the assembled Vakreen. No one spoke to the Emperor so directly. Thelnox stepped forward, raising one of his 4 arms. "You will address His Imperial Majesty with proper respect," he hissed. "You will bow before the throne." "Let her speak," the Emperor said. His voice was deep and resonant, like rocks grinding together. "I am curious what a human has to say about my son." Karen took a breath. "Your son's name was Danny. At least, that's what we called him. We found him when he was about a year old, alone in the woods near our farm. He was crying and scared. We searched for his family, but no one came. So we kept him. We raised him." "You stole him," Thelnox interrupted. "The prince's trial was sacred. He was meant to endure alone." "He was a baby," Karen said, and for the first time, anger crept into her voice. "He couldn't talk. He couldn't walk properly. He would have died if we hadn't helped him." "That was his test," the Emperor said quietly. "To survive or perish. Such is the way of our people." Karen stared at him. "You send babies into the wilderness to die?" "We send princes to learn strength," Gental replied. "Most survive. Some do not. That is the nature of leadership. Only the strong are worthy to rule." Karen felt sick. These people had abandoned a child on purpose, and now they were angry that someone had saved him. But she hadn't come here to argue about their customs. She had come for something else. "Tell me about your burial rites," she said. "The ones you perform for royalty." The question surprised them. Thelnox's eyes narrowed with suspicion, but the Emperor leaned forward slightly. "Why would you ask this?" "Because Danny deserves them," Karen said. "He was your prince. He should be honored the way your people honor their dead. I buried him in a simple grave because I didn't know better. But now I do. I want to fix that." "You wish to perform the sacred rites of ascension?" The Emperor's voice carried a note of disbelief. "You, a human, wish to conduct a ceremony that takes our priests years to master?" "I want my son to go home properly," Karen said. "Teach me your rites. I'll perform them. I'll do whatever it takes to give him the honor he deserves." The throne room erupted in shocked whispers. Vakreen nobles gestured and argued in their own language. Thelnox looked furious. "This is an insult," he said. "The rites are sacred. They cannot be performed by an inferior species." "She offers tribute to the prince," another voice called out. It was an older Vakreen, wearing robes instead of armor. "Such an offer has not been made in 3,000 years." The Emperor raised one massive hand, and silence fell instantly. He studied Karen for a long moment, his black eyes unreadable. "You understand what you're asking," he said. "The rites of ascension are complex. They must be performed exactly, or they fail. If you fail, if you dishonor my son with incompetence, you and everyone you love will die." "I understand," Karen said. "But I loved Danny. I sang to him every night. I taught him to read. I held him when he was scared. If anyone should help him reach your heaven, or wherever your people go after death, it should be me. His mother. The word hung in the air. Mother. Karen saw something flicker in the Emperor's eyes. For just a moment, his expression softened. You claim motherhood over a prince of the Vakreen Empire? I claim motherhood over my son, Karen said firmly. I don't care what title he was born with. He was Danny to me. He was mine. Thelnox moved to speak, but the Emperor silenced him with a gesture. Gental stood from his throne, and the entire room seemed to hold its breath. He walked down the steps, each footfall echoing like thunder, until he stood directly in front of Karen. She had to crane her neck to look up at him. I had 12 sons, the Emperor said quietly. 9 survived their trials. 3 did not. I mourned each one, but I understood their deaths were necessary. The weak cannot lead the strong. He paused. But I never thought about what happened to their bodies. Where they lay. Whether anyone mourned them as you mourn my youngest. Karen said nothing. She could see pain in those alien eyes, hidden beneath layers of imperial dignity and ancient tradition. If I allow this, the Emperor continued, the ceremony must be perfect. You will have one day to learn what our priests study for decades. You will perform it on your world, witnessed by both our peoples. If you succeed, the prince will ascend with honor. If you fail, your colony will burn. And if I succeed? Karen asked. Then you will have given me something no one else could, the Emperor said. The knowledge that my son died loved and cared for, not alone in the wilderness. That his last years were filled with kindness instead of trial. I accept your terms, Karen said. The Emperor nodded slowly. Then we begin. You have 12 hours to learn the rites. My priests will instruct you. But know this, human. I am showing you mercy because you offer tribute freely. My advisor believes you are trying to trick us. If he is right, if this is some scheme, your species will learn what it means to anger the Vakreen. It's not a trick, Karen said. I just want to say goodbye to my son properly. The Emperor returned to his throne. Then let us see if a human can honor a Vakreen prince. Thelnox, arrange for the ceremony. And send word to the colony. They are to prepare sacred ground. As guards led Karen away to begin her training, she heard Thelnox speaking urgently to the Emperor in their own language. She didn't understand the words, but the tone was clear. He thought this was a mistake. He wanted blood and vengeance, not ceremonies and mercy. But the Emperor had made his decision. Karen would get her chance. On New Haven, Lauren received the message. She stared at the instructions, her hands shaking. They had 12 hours to build a ceremonial platform. 12 hours to gather both species for a funeral. 12 hours before Karen either saved them all or doomed them forever. Get construction crews moving, she ordered. And someone find Steve Morrison. His wife just bet all our lives on a funeral. Karen sat in a meditation chamber aboard the flagship, surrounded by 3 Vakreen priests. They were old, their skin faded to a lighter purple, and they moved with careful precision. For the past 10 hours, they had been teaching her movements, words, and rituals that made no sense to her human mind. The anointing oil must be applied in spirals, the eldest priest said, demonstrating with his 4 arms moving in perfect synchronization. Start at the crown, move to the heart, then to the feet. Each spiral represents a stage of life. Birth, growth, death, rebirth. Karen tried to copy the movement, but her 2 arms couldn't create the same pattern. She stumbled through it, feeling inadequate and exhausted. You will never master this in time, one priest muttered. Then I'll do it badly, Karen said, but I'll do it with love. That has to count for something. The priests exchanged glances. Love was not a concept that factored into Vakreen religious ceremonies. Precision mattered. Tradition mattered. Love was irrelevant. But they continued teaching her anyway, because the Emperor had commanded it. On New Haven, construction crews worked through the night. They built a massive amphitheater on the plain outside the colony, using prefabricated panels and emergency lights. By dawn, a circular platform stood ready, surrounded by seating for thousands. Vakreen engineers had provided specifications, and human workers had followed them exactly. Steve Morrison stood at the platform's edge, watching the sun rise. He hadn't slept. Lauren had explained everything to him. His wife was on an alien warship, learning to perform a funeral for their son. If she failed, everyone died. If she succeeded, maybe they all survived. He wanted to be angry. He wanted to storm the Vakreen ship and bring Karen home. But he knew his wife. She had made her choice. All he could do was trust her. The Vakreen began arriving at mid-morning. Shuttles descended from the fleet, carrying hundreds of aliens. They wore ceremonial robes of deep purple and silver, and they moved in perfect formations to their designated areas. Human colonists filled the opposite side of the amphitheater, nervous and scared but curious to see what would happen. Lauren stood with Jacob near the platform. "We have snipers positioned in the hills," Jacob whispered. "If this goes wrong, we might be able to take out their leadership." "And then their fleet destroys us in 30 seconds, Lauren replied. "No, Jacob. This is Karen's play. We win or lose based on what happens here." A royal shuttle landed at noon, and Emperor Gental emerged. He was even more imposing in person, wearing armor that seemed to absorb light. His honor guard surrounded him, weapons ready, as he took his position at the front of the Vakreen section. Ambassador Thelnox stood beside him, his expression dark. "This is foolishness," he said. "The human will fail, and we will look weak for even allowing the attempt." "We will look merciful," the Emperor replied. "And mercy is not weakness. It is the privilege of the strong." Karen's shuttle arrived last. When she stepped out, Steve almost didn't recognize her. She wore simple white robes, and her face was painted with ceremonial markings the priests had applied. She carried a wooden box containing the anointing oils and sacred artifacts. Her hands trembled, but she walked steadily toward the platform. Their eyes met across the amphitheater. Steve wanted to run to her, to pull her away from this madness. But he stayed in his seat, because that's what she needed from him. Trust. Dr. Grant supervised as Danny's body was brought to the platform. It had been preserved in stasis, and now it lay on a bed of silver cloth. The small coffin seemed impossibly tiny compared to the massive ceremony surrounding it. Karen climbed onto the platform. Thousands of eyes watched her. Human. Vakreen. All waiting to see if she would fail. She began the rites. Her voice was quiet at first as she recited the Vakreen prayers. The words felt strange on her tongue, the sounds almost impossible for human vocal cords to produce. But she had practiced them until her throat was raw, and now she spoke them as clearly as she could. She opened the wooden box and removed the anointing oil. The smell was sharp and bitter, like burning wood mixed with flowers. She poured it onto her fingers and began to apply it to Danny's forehead, trying to remember the spiral pattern the priests had shown her. Her hands shook. She got the pattern wrong on the first attempt, starting from the wrong point. She heard disapproving murmurs from the Vakreen section. But she wiped away the oil and tried again, this time getting it right. Crown to heart to feet. Birth, growth, death, rebirth. She placed the sacred artifacts around Danny's body. A crystal sphere that represented the cosmos. A blade that represented the warrior's spirit. A flowering branch that represented life eternal. Each item had to be positioned exactly, at precise angles that she had memorized. The Vakreen priests watched her carefully, ready to stop the ceremony if she made a critical error. But so far, she was getting it right. Barely. Finally, she reached the last component. The Song of Ascension. This was the part Karen had dreaded. The song was meant to guide the dead prince's spirit back to the Vakreen homeworld, to reunite him with his ancestors. It required hitting harmonic tones that human vocal cords simply couldn't produce. The priests had told her this was impossible. But she had to try anyway. Karen opened her mouth and attempted the first note. It came out wrong, flat and broken. She tried again, straining her voice to reach the proper pitch. But it was no use. The song was beyond her. The Vakreen section stirred. Thelnox stood, pointing at her. The ceremony has failed. She cannot complete the rites. This insult must be answered with blood. Wait, the Emperor said. Let her finish. But Karen had stopped trying to sing the Vakreen song. Tears ran down her face as she looked at Danny's peaceful features. She had failed him. She couldn't give him the send-off he deserved. Then, without planning it, without thinking, she began to sing something else. It was a lullaby. A simple human song she had sung to Danny every night since the day she found him. The words were soft and gentle, about stars and dreams and safety. It was the song that helped him sleep when he had nightmares. The song he had asked for when he was scared. Her voice was rough from crying, but she sang it anyway. For her son. For the little boy who had loved her bedtime songs. The amphitheater fell silent. Emperor Gental stood slowly, his eyes fixed on Karen. Something in his expression had changed. He began to hum, a low resonant sound that matched the melody of Karen's lullaby. Karen faltered, confused. But the Emperor continued, adding Vakreen harmonic tones to her simple song. The combination was haunting, beautiful in a way that raised chills. Then the three priests stood and began to sing as well. Their voices wove through the melody, creating layers of sound that shouldn't have worked together but somehow did. More Vakreen joined in. Then humans, recognizing the lullaby, began to sing the words they knew. Steve's voice rose from the crowd, joining his wife's. Lauren sang. Jacob sang. 50,000 humans and hundreds of Vakreen, all singing together. The song grew until it filled the sky, a chorus of two species united in grief and hope and something that transcended their differences. When the last note faded, Karen stood on the platform, tears streaming down her face. Danny's body was anointed and honored, surrounded by artifacts and covered in blessings from two worlds. The Emperor walked onto the platform. He knelt beside the small coffin, placing one massive hand on it gently. "This song," he said quietly. "Where did you learn it?" "I just sang it to him," Karen whispered. "Every night. It helped him sleep." The Emperor closed his eyes. "It is an old song. Very old. From before the Empire, when my people were young and gentle. We had forgotten it. But it lives in our genetic memory, passed down through generations. My son remembered it. Somehow, he remembered." He stood and faced the crowd. His voice carried across the amphitheater. "The rites are complete. The prince ascends with honor, blessed by two peoples, mourned by a mother who gave him love when the universe gave him only trial. Let it be recorded that on this day, the Vakreen Empire witnessed something we believed impossible. A human honoring a Vakreen. A stranger loving our son as her own." Thelnox looked like he wanted to protest, but the Emperor silenced him with a gesture. "The ceremony is finished. The debt is paid." The amphitheater emptied slowly after the ceremony ended. Humans and Vakreen moved past each other carefully, still uncertain, still afraid. But something had changed. The weapons were still there, the warships still hung in orbit, but the immediate threat of violence had passed. Emperor Gental requested a private meeting with the human leadership. He met Lauren, Jacob, and the Morrisons in a conference room hastily set up near the ceremonial grounds. When Karen and Steve entered, they expected anger or demands. Instead, the Emperor bowed his head to them. "You have given me a gift I did not know I needed," he said. "Knowledge that my son's final years were filled with love. In our culture, we believe suffering creates strength. But perhaps we have forgotten that love also creates strength." "What happens now?" Lauren asked carefully. "To the colony. To us." The Emperor settled into a chair built to accommodate his massive frame. "That depends on many things. Ambassador Thelnox believes we should punish your people for interfering with the prince's trial. He argues that mercy will make the Empire look weak." "And what do you believe?" Karen asked. "I believe," the Emperor said slowly, "that we came here expecting to find thieves and murderers. Instead, we found parents who loved a child that was not their own. We found a species willing to risk everything to honor their dead properly. These are not the actions of savages." He pulled up a holographic display showing the broader galaxy. Dozens of star systems glowed in different colors. "The Vakreen Empire has been watching humanity for 20 years, he continued. "Since you first ventured beyond your home system. We have been deciding whether you are worthy of contact, or whether you are a threat that must be eliminated before you grow too powerful." Jacob felt his stomach drop. You were planning to invade us. We were planning to evaluate you, the Emperor corrected. This situation with my son, it was unexpected. But it became a test. How would humans react when faced with superior force? Would you lie? Would you fight? Would you destroy evidence of wrongdoing? You were testing us, Lauren said, understanding dawning. This whole thing was a test. Not intentionally, Chantal said. My son's death was real. My grief is real. But yes, your response told us much about your species. Most civilizations we have encountered would have denied involvement, or tried to blame others, or simply attacked us in desperate fury. You did none of these things. Karen did something no conquered species has done in the Empire's history, he continued. She offered tribute freely. She showed respect for our customs while maintaining dignity for her own people. She turned what could have been a massacre into a moment of unity. Steve held his wife's hand tightly. So what does that mean for us? The Emperor stood and walked to the window, looking out at New Haven Colony. It means I am proposing an alliance. Formal recognition of humanity as a sovereign species. Trade agreements. Cultural exchange. Protection under the Empire's military umbrella. The room went silent. Lauren exchanged glances with Jacob, hardly believing what they were hearing. You're serious? Lauren asked. Completely, the Emperor said. But there are conditions. This colony, New Haven, will become a joint settlement. Vakreen families will live here alongside humans. We will learn from each other. And Karen and Steve Morrison will serve as the first official ambassadors between our peoples. Karen's eyes went wide. Us? We're just farmers. We don't know anything about diplomacy. You know about love, the Emperor said simply. You know about sacrifice and honor. Those qualities matter more than diplomatic training. Besides, my people need to see the humans who raised their prince. They need to understand that your species is capable of caring for others, even at great cost to themselves. Over the following weeks, the agreement was formalized. Ambassador Thelnox was removed from his position, reassigned to a remote outpost as punishment for his aggressive stance. He had wanted war and conquest. The Emperor wanted something different. A memorial was built for Danny on a hill overlooking the colony. It was designed by both human and Vakreen architects, blending styles from both cultures. A statue showed a small boy looking up at the stars, and inscribed beneath it in both languages was a simple message, "Beloved son of two worlds. May all children be so cherished." The story of Karen's ceremony spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Other alien civilizations heard about the human mother who honored a Vakreen prince, and the Emperor who chose peace over vengeance. 3 major galactic powers reached out to Earth within months, requesting diplomatic contact. The Lullaby Accord, as it became known, changed everything. Humanity gained access to faster-than-light technology that would have taken them centuries to develop. Vakreen medicine helped cure diseases that had plagued human colonies. Trade routes opened. Opportunities multiplied. But the real change was deeper than technology or politics. For the first time, the galaxy saw humans not as primitive newcomers, but as people capable of wisdom and compassion. The Vakreen, feared throughout the galaxy as ruthless conquerors, showed they could value mercy as much as strength. Karen and Steve struggled with their new roles at first. They attended diplomatic functions, met with alien leaders, gave speeches about cultural understanding. It was exhausting and terrifying. But they did it because they understood that Danny's death could either mean nothing, or it could mean everything. They chose to make it mean something. New Haven transformed over the year following the ceremony. Vakreen families moved in, building homes alongside human settlements. Children from both species played together in the parks. At first, the integration was awkward and difficult. Languages differed. Customs clashed. But slowly, relationships formed. A Vakreen engineer named Korthak became friends with Jacob, teaching him about advanced defense systems. A human teacher named Linda started the first mixed-species classroom, where human and Vakreen children learned together. Dr. Grant worked with Vakreen physicians to develop new medical techniques that combined both species' knowledge. Lauren was promoted to regional governor, overseeing not just New Haven but 3 other joint colonies that followed the same model. She worked closely with Vakreen administrators, navigating the complex politics of 2 civilizations learning to coexist. But the biggest changes were personal and small. One evening, a year after the ceremony, Karen stood at Danny's memorial. A young Vakreen child approached her shyly, accompanied by his parents. "Are you the one who sang for the prince?" the child asked in halting English. "I am," Karen said. "Will you teach me the song?" he asked. "My mother says it's important, that it connects our peoples." Karen smiled through tears. "I'd be happy to." She sat with the child on the grass beneath the memorial, teaching him the lullaby she had sung to Danny so many years ago. The child's parents watched, and other families, both human and Vakreen, gathered to listen. Soon they were all singing together, just like they had at the ceremony. The sound drifted across the colony, a reminder of how far they had come. Steve joined his wife, sitting beside her as the song continued. "Do you think Danny knew," he asked quietly, "what he would mean to everyone?" "He was 8 years old," Karen said. "He just wanted to play with his toys and explore the woods. He had no idea he was a prince, or that his life would change the galaxy." "But it did," Steve said. "Because of you. Because you loved him enough to risk everything." Karen leaned against her husband's shoulder, watching the sun set over New Haven. Human and Vakreen children played in the distance, their laughter mixing in the evening air. "I didn't do anything special," she said. "I just did what any mother would do. I honored my son." But that was exactly what had made the difference. In a galaxy full of empires and wars and ancient grudges, one simple act of parental love had accomplished what diplomacy and military might could not. It had shown that different species could understand each other, could mourn together, could build something better than the cycle of conquest and revenge that had defined galactic politics for millennia. 3 other major wars were prevented in the following years, as species used the lullaby accord as a template for peaceful resolution. The galaxy didn't become perfect. Conflicts still happened. But now there was a precedent for choosing understanding over destruction. And it all started because a human farmer and his wife found a crying baby in the woods and decided to love him. Karen Morrison never thought of herself as a hero. She was just a mother who lost her son and wanted to honor his memory properly. But sometimes, the smallest acts of love create ripples that change entire civilizations. On the memorial stone, beneath Danny's statue, someone had added a new inscription in the years since the ceremony. It simply read, "One child. 2 worlds. Infinite hope." As the stars came out above New Haven, Karen sang the lullaby one more time. "For Danny. For the future. For all the children of all species who deserved to grow up in a galaxy where love mattered more than power." And across the stars, in 100 different languages, others sang along.